Recording.
Not the first time that's come up.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Let's read that again.
That was a pretty shonky countdown, people.
Let's not forget, this is actually helpful for editing the show.
Shoggy. That's what I heard.
Shonky.
That's not any better.
1.
All right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Welcome, boys and girls, to episode 7-8 of Bad Voltage. My name is Brian, and we are going to have a podcast today. Stuart, have you thought at all about what we should talk about on said podcast?
I have. I had a bunch of really interesting thoughts about things we should discuss, important things that are going on in the world. And then Jono went out and bought a Pixel XL and won't shut up about it, so we're going to review it.
That's fair. So going to review that. We're also going to talk about the IoT DDoS. Okay, pretty damn quick, or whatever. We're going to talk about the Internet of Things was screwing up everybody's internet a little while ago. Also, inconveniently for me, the morning after I just installed a new router, so I thought it was my router that was causing all the problems. Couldn't figure out what was going on, but we're going to be talking about that.
Has anyone verified that it actually wasn't your router?
Yeah, it does work.
I don't believe it was verified. I need an independent source.
And now, Bad Voltage.
A while back, Jeremy and I both received Pixel C tablets as gifts from Google. We quickly fell in love with them, as you may have heard in a previous review on the show. As a reformed Android fan, frankly I thought Android sucked years ago, I was hoping for Google making a Pixel phone. As I scoured Android news sites, rumours were pointing in precisely that direction. And then, on October the 4th, the Google Pixel phone was announced, and I immediately plonked down my hard-earned dough on a pre-order. The larger Pixel XL edition with 128GB of storage in black. I anxiously awaited for my Pixel to arrive, and I finally got it in my hands on Saturday, that is 4 days prior to this recording. The device specs are pretty meaty, 5.5-inch AMOLED Quad HD screen with Corning Gorilla Glass, Snapdragon 821 processor, a 12.3 megapixel back camera, an 8 megapixel front camera, USB-C quick charging port, fingerprint reader, and of course a damn headphone jack. As I mentioned, I plumped for the 128GB of storage model, but there's also a measly 32GB option too. Hardware-wise, this is beautiful. Some critics claim that the Pixel looks a bit boring and uninspired, and I'd agree with that. It's not much of a departure from the norm as I would have liked. It is, though, a beautiful-looking phone. The screen is gorgeous and it feels well-built and sturdy. No camera bump, which means no annoying rocking when it's laid on a table. And while some people have moaned about the fingerprint reader being on the back while it makes it a pain when the phone's laid on the table, I found the fingerprint reader is a genuinely lovely experience. I pull the phone out of my pocket, my finger is pretty much where the reader tends to be, and it has a satisfying vibration to indicate that the phone is unlocked. It is quick and reliable. Continuing the hardware theme, much has been said of the camera. Google have touted the Pixel having the highest DxO mark rating of any smartphone. Well, good for them. Frankly, I don't give a shit about that. What I care about is whether it takes good-looking pictures for my eye. Now, while I'm no photography expert, I have done some extensive testing while out and about, and I've been blown away by the results. The images look amazing and crisp, the video is smooth and has no shakiness, and the colours really do pop. This is by miles the most incredible camera that I've ever seen on a phone, including the iPhones with their well-regarded cameras. It more than meets the needs for capturing memories that look crisp, colourful, and are great for sharing. Also, the free unlimited storage for phones and videos is a really nice touch. Some people have commented on the halo effect with the Pixel camera, but I've only seen that in one picture out of the 80 plus pictures that I've taken so far in it. Of course, it is a pain, and Google are apparently fixing it, but for day-to-day practical purposes, it's barely registered as an issue for me. Software-wise, of course, like the Nexus line, this is pretty pure Android. There's no bloatware, crapware, or frustrating pop-ups and marketing nonsense. After my terrible Samsung experiences, I'll never go back to a non-Google Android device. The implementation of Android is really nice. It's simple, sleek, wicked fast, and it's a pleasure to use. It's not dramatically different from a Nexus, but it's got some nice refinements and adjustments in terms of look and feel. Setting up the phone was quick and simple, including transferring over my previous data and accounts, and day-to-day usage is a pleasure. The major addition here, of course, is Google Assistant. I tend to use voice commands quite a lot on my phone, and the Google Assistant is definitely an improvement on the previous OK Google implementation. It's fast, generally pretty accurate, and although not perfect, I love that it is now contextually aware. Erica, who has an iPhone, and I did a side-by-side comparison to Siri, and Google Assistant won hands down. Now, it's still rather limited in its broader functionality, but I suspect Assistant is going to continue and grow and improve in the future. This seems to be very much of a data science and machine learning challenge, which Google are doing some great work in, and I'm sure we'll get the updates over the air and via releases in the future. What really surprised me about Assistant is that it isn't just the bark into a text box and get results feature that I'd seen. Assistant also tries to help in other areas too. So for example, on Saturday, Erica, Jack and I went into town shopping, and I was taking loads of photos and videos to test out the camera. Assistant later in the day automatically took a bunch of those photos and made collages and a nice slideshow complete with music that would make sharing them really easy. I love this touch. It means that my phone is genuinely trying to help me with content I probably wouldn't make previously, which is a really nice surprise. Battery-wise, battery life has been pretty incredible so far. As an example, yesterday I woke up with the phone fully charged, and I used the phone a lot during the day as I normally would, including GPS navigation, tethering for my commute into work, watching videos, taking pictures and videos, and more. When I went to bed, I had 15% battery left. That is unheard of on my previous devices. As Stuart said in the chat conversation though, new phones are always better with battery life, so I'm curious to see how this actually lasts, in months to come. So, what is the bad voltage verdict? Overall, I love my Pixel XL. Of course, it was bloody expensive, way too expensive to be honest, and it's not perfect, and I would have liked a little bit more originality, but I am confident in saying that this is one of the best Android phones in the market. I love it. Also, as a pre-orderer, they are sending me the Daydream headset for free in November, so I'll be able to share my thoughts on that too. So if you've got the cash, this is highly recommended, particularly if you want best of breed Android.
Okay, man. Okay. How much did it cost you for the 128 gig version?
This was, I think, $950 all
the
in.
Pixel XL 128, if you get the device protection, is $968. So if you compare that to the iPhone 7 Plus, which is comparable, 128 gig with Apple Care is $998. So it's
that is
basically
the saddest
as expensive
thing I've ever heard.
So
that is crazy.
I have to say, I'm a giant fan of the Nexus. I think I've owned every one except the Nexus S. So I just assumed when they were announcing a Pixel, I would get
devices,
one. I did not.
Devices, yeah.
And the thing with me is, it seems like the sky-high price feels more like a marketing ploy, aka look at us, we're just as good as Apple and the iPhone, more than a justifiable price point. Right? It's not waterproof.
Wouldn't surprise me.
At that price is absolutely astounding. The speaker decision is odd. It's not a big a deal to me as it is to some people. The no OIS, once again, it's odd. The no wireless charging, maybe. The 2 years of updates and then the year of security updates compared to the Apple's 4 and 5 in some cases. It's just for $1,000.
That's ridiculous.
They had to wow you. And they did not
way
come close to wowing
stupid.
anyone with this. It's such a surprising phone to me that I am almost astounded.
Yeah.
What's interesting, I think, is that it is definitely I think it's definitely like probably the most, in terms of the quality of an Android device, it's definitely one of the better Android devices, but I think the bar is so much lower in terms of hardware than Apple typically, that like even though it's a better Android device, it just doesn't stack up to the iPhone.
Really? Because there's iPhones made of pure plastic, man. That's total bullcrap.
I'm talking about recent iPhones.
What defines recent? The last 4 months? I mean, come on, no. No.
Last two iPhones.
Most of the recent
iPhones are pretty nice
iPhones have been garbage from a hardware perspective. You know it. We all know it. Anyone else is just buying into how.
Well, the mountains of cash they're generating
they,
with them would seem to once again disagree with you. But
I think you're full of shit. Yeah. The fact that iPhones sell like hotcakes would suggest that, but I'm sure the consumers are stupid.
The thing that's most astonishing to me was this
absolutely.
phone.
And
getting
wait a
back to the
minute.
Pixel and not the iPhone.
I want to be clear about this. Jono, the fact that you bought this phone proves that you're a stupid consumer for the very reason that
that's
Jeremy
what actually the point I'm making.
pointed out.
Some of the models are sold out until mid-November. Some of them are sold out until mid-December. And one model is already sold out permanently.
It's crazy.
This is astounding.
That's asinine for a device that has, at most, a 2-year lifespan and then is dead.
Well, it's 2 years of OS updates and a full year of security updates after that. So you should
but in the Android world where shit just stops working after a while, no, that's basically saying
my
in 2
Nexus
years
5
you're
still
buying
works
a new
completely
phone.
fine. I don't use it day to day, but I do use it, and it's still
Clearly,
and that's old.
What Google have been trying to do with this is the halo effect, ironically enough, which is not to say, that it screws up your pictures. What they want is the halo effect the same way that Ferrari have it, where there is a top-of-the-line model that everyone could look at it and go, wow, that's such an aspirational thing to own, which is what the Chromebook Pixel did. Right? It was like, here is an amazing device. It's beautiful to look at. It's well put together. It turned out that it wasn't necessarily very well put together, but it looked like it was. It blew everyone away when it came out. Otherwise, if they weren't planning on doing that, if they just wanted to make a best-of-breed Android, they could have just called this the Nexus XL. Right? The only reason it got rebranded is so they could go, nah, this is all new, dude, right? It's new and exciting and aspirational and brilliant. That's why, as Jeremy says, that's why it's $1,000. And it just seems like, Google Nexus 0.1. As far as I can tell, it's all like, here's a phone from Google. You're like, but the last one was from Google, man. And they say, no, because this is actually designed and built by Google, and the previous ones are all with our hardware partners, LG or Samsung or whatever. But it's not like Google are making it in bloody Mountain View. They're all still ODMs anyway, right?
I think what you're saying, Ak, is absolutely legit because. I think what you're saying is totally legit. Like, I've owned a bunch of Nexus phones in the past. So I know what they're like compared to the Pixel. And it isn't that dramatic of a departure, if at all. I mean, there are some things that seem to be a little bit more unique about this compared to the previous Nexus phones, but it isn't that much of a departure. And the price point is way more expensive. Part of the reason why I went for this was I used to have a Nexus 6 and I dropped it and smashed the screen. So I went back to my Samsung Galaxy S5 as like my regular phone, which really sucks for day-to-day use today. So my plan was I want to buy another Nexus, but I wanted to wait until, at the time I was hearing like, oh, there's going to be a new Nexus device coming by, which ultimately ended up being the Pixel. So for me, it was more about I want to get the newest iteration of the pure Android line. Yeah. The fact that it's a Pixel, I was excited about the notion of a Pixel because what I wanted to see in my head was, frankly, the Pixel tablet shrunk into a phone form, which I love the hardware on the tablet, which it isn't. It is different. So, and that's where I think this has been a disappointment is I was expecting like a beautiful kind of aluminium kind of looking device like the Pixel C tablet, with the cool lights in the back, and it isn't that. No. It is basically it's a buffed up expensive Nexus. But it's a great phone for what it is. But it's
would you spend $968 on it again, having used it?
Honestly, yeah. Okay. I mean, I use my phone.
$1,000.
$1,000.
What's wrong with you?
Honestly, that my
Stuart
phone
asked a good question.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. My phone is so central to my life, my business, and everything that I do. It's part of the reason when I buy a laptop, I max out the specs of the laptop.
If you're going to live on it, you want a nice one. I understand.
I am all in favour of buying a decent quality phone. I do it always. I buy phones that I like the look of, that I think are going to work well, all that kind of thing. But as far as I can tell, this is exactly as Jeremy and Brian have both said, this is not expensive because it's so much higher quality than everything else. It's expensive so they can go, look, it's Veblen good. It's expensive, therefore you should desire it more. I have a question for you, right? One of the things that permanently hacks me off is the number of people who buy Apple stuff because it's aspirational. They feel like they're buying into a lifestyle, right? You think you're spending that money on that laptop, but you didn't need to. You're spending that money on that phone, you didn't need to. You're doing it because it makes you feel cool, right? And Apple have done a very good job of capitalizing on that marketing and that mindset they've put into people's heads.
They have.
Google are now attempting to do the same thing, I think. I can't decide whether I think it's worse that only Apple get to do it and no one else can be a rival, or whether it's worse that Google can now do it too, so there's now a rival to Apple, but now there are two people screwing everyone because of minds. Obviously, the optimum answer is there will be naught people doing this, and people will buy things because of what they're worth, not because of the thing it sets into your head. But is it better now that there is someone else who is trying to compete on that ground rather than just ceding the whole top end of the market to Apple and going, we'll just compete at the bottom?
My take on this is, like years ago there was the whole Mac versus PC advertising campaign thing. And it was Apple, painting a picture that PCs were boring and functional and not creative and all the rest of it. And at that time, that was probably, in line with the way a lot of people kind of looked at Macs versus PCs. Microsoft have tried to focus on Windows and their overall offering to kind of make it more interesting and creative. I tend to think of the iPhone and the Android phones as kind of the similar differences. Like people see iPhones as these these creative, design-driven, like fashionable devices, and Android are kind of like a more functional thing. Part of the reason why I personally choose Android, apart from the fact that I'm just not a fan of Apple devices. I've got a Mac, but I don't like I've got an iPad, but I don't use it. I use my Google Pixel mostly.
So you're not a fan of Apple devices. You just have the majority of the Apple hardware ecosystem.
No, I've got two. I don't have
an iPhone.
I don't have a Mac Mini. I don't have a phone. I don't have an iPhone. I don't have an Apple Watch. I don't have any of the networking hardware.
Nobody has an Apple Watch.
No one has an Apple Watch. That doesn't count. Yeah.
I'd say a lot of people have an Apple Watch.
Yeah, a lot of people where you live do. No one else anywhere in the world has one.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree. Anyway, beside the point. But I think that one of the things I love about Android, part of the reason why I personally stick to Android, is out of the two major phone providers, I feel like the innovation's happening in Android. I feel that's where the exciting stuff is happening, particularly on the services side of things. Like Erica, again, she's got an iPhone. Apple Maps is shit compared to Google Maps. Siri is shit compared to Google Assistant. The Apple View thing for looking at content that relates to you, kind of comparable to Google Now, isn't as good as Google Now. So for me, that's the reason why I like Android. I like the fact that they're heading more towards a design-driven direction. I think what they've done with Material has been really good. A lot of the ecosystem in Android has picked that up, and I think the apps do look better. But I don't want it to become Apple have got so opinionated by their design now that I think it's actually impacting the quality of their products. And from what I can tell, when you take devices like the Pixel, if they'd have taken the Pixel, they'd have knocked it down by $200 or $300, and they'd have refined the hardware a little bit more, make it a little bit more original. I think it would be a genuinely compelling phone. But because the hardware doesn't look that different, it's as expensive, if not more expensive. It's it's not going to be a competitive force for Apple.
And precisely the point is, when they're pitching the whole, this is the Pixel, it's by Google, and you think, well, on the one hand, the other handset manufacturers tend to take a thing and screw it up, and we don't like that. But equally, Google doing stuff that is done by Google for Google's benefit is sort of slightly worrying. Ignoring Brian's point of view about, they're storing all your data in the cloud and stealing it and everything. And things like if you look at Duo, for example, it's increasingly we built this thing, but you have to use our app for it, and you can't use it the way that we don't want you to. It's a very kind of Apple-y sort of a feeling.
It is. It's a giant middle finger.
And I'm not necessarily sure I want to see Apple get unseated from the crown and replaced by Apple II Google Edition. Doesn't actually buy you anything.
I like the phrase Apple II Google Edition. That's just delightful. So here's what I would like, and I know this is kind of far-reaching here, but I would love a year from now for you to revisit this Pixel phone 1 year in, because I had the Chromebook Pixel and then I had the Pixel C, both of which when I first got them, I thought they were amazing. They were built well. They felt good. The design was amazing. The battery life was stellar. And then about a year into them, in both cases, they literally just started falling apart. They're put together mostly by glue on the inside. And like with the Pixel C, especially with like the keyboard magnetic flap that goes over the screen, it just starts falling apart entirely. And the old Chromebook Pixels, the keys just start falling off and the screens start pulling out and the hinges start pulling away. Even under light usage, the Pixel line come across as amazing for maybe a year, and then they just fall the fuck apart. And so I would love to, so this is why I would never buy another one until I start seeing their hardware quality improving. So I would love to see this a year in to see how this thing's holding up.
It will be very interesting to see whether this is this is a new incarnation of the Nexus S, which was great, and Jeremy, you should have had one because it was great, or even the Nexus 1, which is also great.
The Nexus
or whether
1 was
it's
awesome.
whether it's basically the Pixel version of the Galaxy Nexus, which was terrible.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
What's interesting to me is I generally, like with my, I've never used the Pixel Chromebook thing, but with my Pixel C, and I haven't had it that long. It's only been since earlier this year.
Yeah, it'll fall apart.
So far, it's working pretty good. The thing that I've noticed more with Android devices, and admittedly it's been the non-Nexus devices, it's more the software. Like it just gets so freaking slow and clogs down to to a point where it just operates at a snail's pace. It feels like the more you put onto an Android device, it then just becomes unusable. Although I wonder, I've noticed that mainly on non-Nexus devices. It's like that with my Samsung Galaxy S5 right now, for example. Like when I first,
they've gotten a lot better with that,
the phone,
especially the S7. It seems to.
Right.
They seem to have been learning.
And
who manufactured the Pixel C?
And I'm curious to see two things: like, how is the battery in the Pixel going to hold up, and how is the software implemention? Like, is it going to slow down like it does all with other devices?
The battery is not going to hold up well. 9 months from now, there'll be none of this. I used it all day and I've still got 15% left at the end of the day. Bollocks! You'll be there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, going, "I need to find someone to plug this in because I'm going out this evening."
I have a somewhere in between 6 and 9 month old Nexus 6P, and it always gets me through the day, and I use it all day heavily. And I regularly make it to the end of the day around 15 or 20%. Always.
I'm impressed with that.
That's why I really think
with previous Nexuses, I never had the issue.
It stinks, but it almost feels like we can't even review this thing until Jono's been using it for an entire year.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't be worried about it falling apart
bad.
personally, just because it's made by HTC and their phones tend to be really, really, really good long term.
I've
had a couple of the M9
Yeah.
and the M8, and they.
Yeah,
I don't anticipate that big stuff. I don't know who manufactured
quality.
the Pixel C that it's falling apart, but.
From a hardware quality point of view, HTC are excellent. I really like the One M9. They have that very kind of premium machined out of one block of aluminium feel to them. Yeah. God knows why they just don't get anywhere in the market. But they're really good at building phones. Samsung make plastic rubbish phones. The only one they made which looked nice was the Edge, and you can't use an Edge because there's no point in having the Edge. You've got to use some weird Samsung proprietary API, so no one built anything for it.
Not many non-Samsung apps support it. Although, I thought phones looking better and better was a thing that I wanted until when we were at All Things Open last week. Two people actually had a Motorola. What was it? I don't even remember the model of it, but it's basically indestructible.
Those guys.
And I'm not exaggerating, literally throwing it across the room multiple times. It was like I kind of want one of those.
That's cool.
On the last night,
I like that.
we were stood talking to this guy called Charlie Resinger, who helps get open source into schools, and his two colleagues, and he was talking about how like this phone is like indestructible. Like, really? And he just literally throws it across the room onto a hard floor.
Like a
There's no
tile
carpet in this
floor,
room.
yeah. I've never seen anything like it.
Like a tile floor.
Wow. So none of this, you brush against the corner of it, and then you get that lovely spider web of cracks emanating out from the corner.
No, the thing didn't have a scratch
and
on
then
it.
his two colleagues
so
like,
then
yeah,
we were all like kind of looking aghast.
Like, yeah, we've got
and he proceeds to just chuck it straight up in the air. Fine.
Yeah, his two colleagues are like, yeah, we've got the same phones as well. And they started lobbing them around. It's like, what are we doing?
What was this device?
There's a Motorola.
What was this device?
I forget. Was it the Droid?
It was a Droid something. Droid X.
Droid something, yeah.
Wow, really?
I was amazed.
I'll look it up and post
Charlie
it to the
said at
forum
one point, like,
after the show is posted.
Yeah.
But
see, now that's cool.
So the phone
equivalent
didn't
of like a
look
Panasonic
awesome.
Tough Book for phones is cool.
But it wasn't a ridiculous looking phone, but it did have a little bit of a bigger if you think the chin on the Pixel's bad, it had a little bit of a bigger bezel than that. And you could tell the screen was kind of layered, so it had some kind of overlay on it. But to be able to just not care to that degree is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty astounding.
I would just like to end my comments on this by pointing out that it has still been, was it 3, 4, 5 years since I've had a cell phone, and I am not buying the Pixel, and I have an extra $1,000 in my pocket because of that, and everything that Jono can do with the Pixel, I can still get done, and my life is wonderful. I would just like to add that out there to the universe for anyone thinking about buying a psychotically expensive cell phone that accomplishes nothing new in their life.
So that brings us to the listener. Have you bought a Pixel phone? We'd like to hear in the forum, once again, community.badvoltage.org. Have you bought a Pixel? And if not, at what price point would you buy this identical phone? Not if they had all the other things, would you spend $1,000? But this exact product for the 128 gig or the 32 gig, which is currently, what do they charge for that? $649. At what price would you buy those phones?
I'd like to know that. And and be realistic. Like, don't say like $10, right? You've got to say,
because I think
I would buy this
the
phone
Pixel
for
XL at
$9.
$799. I think I would have probably bought.
Yeah.
That's my personal. $849.
I always find that like $649,
$968. Wow,
that's insane.
It's expensive.
So, the internet went away, or at least a good proportion of the internet went away. We saw Twitter go down for the first time in ages and ages and ages. And we saw GitHub go away, a whole bunch of other websites. And it turned out it was because of an enormous internet-wide DDoS being launched from Internet of Things devices, which had been compromised. And it turns out that there's an enormous botnet for these things, and it was all being pointed at a particular DNS server, or a particular DNS provider, I should say, DYN. Or DIN, I'm not sure whether you pronounce it like that.
Dine.
What is it? Dine? Oh, as in dynamic, I suppose.
That is how you pronounce it.
that is how you pronounce it. What I'm interested in here is a couple of things, to be honest with you. First of all, is the IoT a terrible idea because it basically provides this huge platform for doing this kind of thing? Secondly, is it worrying? Because there are now obviously people out there who have command over this kind of enormous botnet. So it's basically a laser weapon they can point at anyone they like. And is this not worrying? And thirdly, the whole point of the distributed name service is that it's distributed, and pointing it at one provider who everyone happens to use ought not to kill things, and it did. So I've seen people talk about this being a new age of cyber war or something, which is obviously cobblers. It's not like DDoSes are new, but there are a whole bunch of different angles to this, and I'm interested in your thoughts.
So
what are your thoughts?
I have two comments in response to those things. First of all, I don't know why this keeps getting blamed on the Internet of Things, because as terrifying as it would be if this were to happen with the Internet of Things, it happened with webcams. It was almost exclusively webcams and DVR devices, meaning when it does happen to IoT, it's going to be, if not incrementally worse, an order of magnitude worse, because there are that many more IoT devices. A webcam's not an IoT device by any definition.
How is a webcam which connects directly to the internet not an IoT device?
Because anything that connects to the internet isn't really I would not consider a webcam an IoT device. We've had
I think we're probably kind of getting to the point of splitting hairs there. Yeah. I mean,
but the thing is, when it really does, it seems inevitable that this will happen with true IoT devices, and then it's going to be horrific. So blaming on it now,
when
almost
everyone's
not doing a
crockpot and
service to how bad
refrigerator
it's going to
begins
be.
attacking us.
Right. When the toasters take the internet
Correct.
down, that's when it's going to really be a thing, right? But to my knowledge,
it is not the Skynet we envisaged, by the way.
And more importantly, it wasn't just webcams, it was one specific... Well,
it was like two manufacturers were 80-some%. Yeah.
But...
So this was, for those not familiar, this was the Mirai bot, which is on GitHub, actually. And it's, So, and the other thing that I think is interesting is the Mirai bot is default credentials over Telnet. That's how in one day you get hundreds of thousands or millions of devices in 2016. Right? You look back to the Morris worm, which was like the late 80s, and that did use dictionary-based attacks eventually, but at least it started with buffer overflows and sendmail backdoor exploits and stuff. This is 2016, and we're talking about default credentials over Telnet bringing down the internet, and I don't even know how to start with that.
Right.
And more interestingly, one of the things that puzzled me, and a few other people were talking about it, when this first came out, and the thing was it's all IoT devices, was, fine, imagine you have your toaster or whatever, and it's stupid enough to open a random port, or open a port for Telnet, and you can log in with password admin, and you've got root access, and then you can buy raw sockets and do what you like. You still can't get it because it's behind your NAT.
A couple of them supported UPnP,
but it
so
is
the
actually
router
protection.
automatically will open a hole.
Yes. So, some of them will get the router to open a hole. Yes,
a lot of them.
And some of them will allow you to essentially bounce connections off of their API server and so on. But a vast proportion of these things, if you've just got a toaster and you've got it on your Wi-Fi, it doesn't just open up a port on your external firewall without asking which is open for Telnet access to anything. But what this meant was that all of these devices, they're not random home consumer devices. So before we even knew what exactly they were, they're obviously not just random home consumer devices that you just bring home and put on your home Wi-Fi, because then they'd be behind your router. So this is, as Jeremy says, it's even worse. This is the subset of devices which are webcams using a core from one particular manufacturer, which are outside a firewall and are remotely compromisable this way, and it's still brought down half the internet. It's a total disaster.
And that router, that firewall we have in everyone's home is only going to provide a very tiny amount of protection, extraordinarily small, because the reality is, if you've got, like, let's flash forward 5 years, the Internet of Things is everywhere, and Canonical has achieved victory with snappiness as far as the eye can see, and every platform, every device, every appliance is all Internet of Things enabled. All it takes is one device getting a little port forwarding going, one laptop, one desktop, one TV, one game console, one thing to get compromised in any way, and then everything behind that firewall can be royally fucked.
In addition to that, right, you don't need network address translation in an IPv6 world. You might still want a router in order that A, you've got one connection to the internet, and B, things are there behind the firewall. But the whole NAT thing wasn't originally designed to be a firewall. It's because we didn't have enough IP addresses and you wanted a private IP range.
Right.
But when every atom in the universe can have 400 billion IP addresses, what's NAT for? You don't need it. So everything then, obviously people aren't just going to make it all internet routable for that reason, but the idea of NAT is less important then. And you can imagine some ISPs going, screw it, well, we might as well issue you an A class block to yourself, because who cares? And therefore, all this stuff ends up being routable just because of misconfiguration or something.
Yeah, easily.
Right.
Really easily. It's astoundingly insecure. I mean, this is, if this particular attack was not, like Jeremy said, the toasters coming to get us, but it does show a great example of how astoundingly easy it would be for that scenario to play out. Extremely easy. I made some random comment. Stuart, you bought a dishwasher. Yeah. I made a random comment jokingly about, is it an IoT dishwasher, right? Because that's a ridiculous idea. However, they are making friggin' IoT dishwashers, which makes me friggin' crazy.
You look like you're channeling Lewis Black there.
then one person who works over at Canonical responded and basically made, I don't have it in front of me, but basically made the comment. I made the comment about how insecure that would be, and this person made the comment about, oh, well, as long as those IoT devices are configured right on a secure platform to start with, everyone's happy and hunky-dory. And that scared the shit out of me, because that is the exact sort of mentality that basically says the people who are building the platforms that are the quote-unquote IoT platforms clearly are not taking the security seriously. And if you look at the exact sort of security measures that, and it's not, I don't want to harp on Canonical and whatnot, because they're just one example of that. It's happening across the industry. There's the way package formats are working, the way every form of security on these IoT-based platforms is working is not 100% secure. It is not even 90% secure. These are not secure platforms, and there is no possible way we can get from where we are today to let's deploy a de facto IoT platform to every appliance and have it be secure. In order to make it secure, that means that every GE and Maytag and every other appliance manufacturer is now going to have a team of security experts constantly rolling out non-stop appliance patches to keep them secure. And they are not under any circumstances going to do that. They simply are not. They don't intend to do that. They are not going to pay for doing that, and they aren't going to do that, which means no matter what, IoT will be insecure and will probably destroy the entire internet. That just simply is, at this point, a given if this takes
you're saying
off.
the internet is toast.
This doesn't actually...
Yeah, it is.
Because of our internet-connected toasters.
Yes.
Well done, sir.
Well done, Jeremy. We're all very proud.
Just died a little inside.
But I don't think this is particularly about the platforms. But your point is, it doesn't matter whether the platform's particularly secure or not. If you look at these devices, they were all coming from one thing. Yes, they were misconfigured, so it was very, very easy to log into them. But they can be configured so they're almost perfect. And then something like Dirty Cow comes along, and you only need 30 seconds before the live patches roll out in order to compromise the whole universe. This is the problem that WordPress has always had, right? They do a really good job about staying up to date with security patches. As soon as they find something, they roll it out. The admin hassles you about it, whatever. But there are that many bots out there searching for WordPress that as soon as a new security thing is found and loaded into a bunch of botnets, your box will be compromised before you can apply the patch, even if you're super diligent.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
So leave that to one side. Fine. This is terrible. The idea that we're going to have, a chip in every device is going to be connected to the internet is going to allow people to create the Death Star or whatever the new one is in The Force Awakens for targeting DDoSes at people. What, if anything, can we do about it? And again, I'm at least partially interested in the idea that a lot of the systems that we built are theoretically meant to be robust to this whole kind of thing. You're not supposed to be able to bring down the DNS. That's what the D means. But if everyone's actually using one major provider because they're presumably better at it than a lot of others...
Well, it reminds me of the conversation. It reminds me of the conversation that we had a while back about Git and GitHub, right?
Yes.
The whole point of Git is that you can be distributed, but everyone's putting their code in one place. And I just don't know what you do to combat that in many ways. I mean...
Every time someone does it, hit them with a frigging 2x4.
They focused on DNS at this time. I don't know that that's an interesting part of the conversation to me, because they'll just focus on something else next time. And they didn't really take as much as the internet down as they're getting credit for, really. It was parts of people were not able to access some sites based on when their local resolver last.
Yeah.
So it's...
And it was mostly in New England, and really, who cares if they have internet access anyway?
I ought to point out, Twitter went away from me, so it's not just people in New England, it's people in Old England as well.
So the first wave was mostly the Northeast, the second wave was globally.
Yeah, and I appreciate but this is more about the whole centralisation thing. Assume that you can't eliminate the idea of distributed denial of service, right?
Right, and you can.
you can at least make it so if you could DDoS an individual site and take that site off, and we basically can't stop. That's what happened to Brian Krebs, right? And he was being backed up by Akamai until they said, you know what, dude, this is just costing too much money. We're not paying for it anymore, which is fair play.
Right.
But the point of the internet is to not be vulnerable to single points of failure, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And aren't we
the thing about DNS is
that?
if you're an enterprise that is utilizing the so-called smart DNS features, it is a pain to map those. Let's say you want to use Route 53, which is Amazon's DNS as a service, and Dyn, both. You have to map a slightly different feature set so that when you make use of those intelligent DNS features, you are enabling them on both platforms in a way where they work the same. So if you're a very simple site just using A records and simple stuff, using multiple providers could not be easier. It's when you start using some of the more advanced features, and Dyn touts a lot of those features to large companies. It's then saying, okay, well, I want to use Ultra DNS as well. How can I map this feature set to Ultra DNS in a way that every time we want to do something isn't a huge pain, and sync both APIs up, and let's hope they don't change their APIs. And so it's easier than it sounds for companies that are utilizing the more complicated end of the product spectrum.
So it sounds like from what you're saying, Jeremy, that it's essentially a bit of a shortcut for these companies. It's a bit of a convenience thing more than anything.
To use one. And I mean, if you're looking at Dyn, their infrastructure is very large. So it's not like there's one server somewhere. They're in tons of POPs across the world, anycasted. Yeah. So taking them down is not a trivial thing. And now many sites are starting to use two. It seems Route 53 and Dyn seem to be the popular combo, but Ultra DNS is in there and some of the other ones. So it'll be interesting to see how people change now. But then, if you read Bruce Shiner's blog, it seems like multiple actors are kind of probing the internet as a whole to see where the weaknesses lie. Yes. So it's going to be intercontinental routers. There's going to be certain things. They're going to target specific things, and when that is fixed, move on to the next thing. So they're going to move on from DNS to something else.
So what do we think? What do we think we do to? I mean, well, obviously we're probably not going to do anything to help with this, but what do we think is the solution here? I mean, like, how does this? Well, how do we rectify this? I mean, I'm pretty sure that you can't build a kill. Well, you probably shouldn't build a kill switch.
I see a lot of people calling for regulation.
With someone sat in front of them.
Regulation makes me very nervous, right? Because calling for government regulation here's all fun and games until the regulation comes mandating closed source, non-replaceable firmwares, and a whole bunch of things that we don't want.
Exactly.
So I would be interested what you guys think of some kind of more along the lines of maybe UL certification saying, there are certain parameters if you're going to sell these devices that to be certified you have to follow. You have to have a security contact. You have to at least maintain updates for X amount of time. You have to go through a list of things to be able to sell an internet-connected device because buying one is damaging to other people. And so I don't want to see regulation, but I'd rather, if some kind of certification process of done sane seems like a less slippery slope.
The reason I think this is irrelevant is because most of the devices won't be susceptible to that, and people will not care enough to buy things with the kite mark on it.
If the internet keeps going down, people will care. I don't think that's an issue.
They absolutely
they're going to have to care at some point.
My best example for this is Apple Lightning cables. Right? Almost no one wants to spend 15 quid on a cable because it feels to them like a rip-off. Right? Yeah. Every non-Apple cable, most of which are appalling and fall apart after a week or a month, or stop charging your phone when you get a new iOS upgrade or whatever, because they're all rip-off cables, they cost $2 rather than $22, and they sell like hotcakes. They're not certified, and people
and the first time a ton of those cause a fire or something like that, people will care.
No, but it's not causing a fire. That's the point.
Right.
It's not stopping
this
you.
This is causing a fire is what I'm saying. Once the internet goes down every week, people will start saying, well, I'm contributing to this. I would like this not to happen.
No, that's fine. If it caused a fire in your house, but you deciding to buy the more expensive toaster will not stop the internet going down. This is a litter picking problem, right? Me individually throwing one can on the street doesn't actually contribute that much to litter. The problem is the collective problem. So me making a change in myself will not help much, and therefore people won't do it. That's why there's litter. We're really bad as a species at dealing with collective action problems, and this is precisely that.
So no, but I kind of get what both of you guys are saying, and I kind of am more inclined to agree with Jeremy, but I don't know. But Stuart makes a really compelling argument there. Now, if we move past that, if we move past what prompts people to actually take action and care, and we move into how do we actually fix this, a certification system might put a bit of a Band-Aid on it, but the reality is it's not actually going to fix it. The only way to fix it is to not have it. I mean, realistically,
that option's already off the table, though.
Right, but this is what I'm saying. If we look back in time just a little bit and look at telephones, right? Cell phones as they work right now, the cell phone connects up to the cell tower, right? From the cell tower's point of view, it has to actually make a pretty long journey, the data that you're sending up over a digital voice connection. A long journey up into a kind of a central set of servers to a server farm, and then back out to different towers before it gets sent to your destination. Yep. Now, in the old days, pre-cell phones, when we're talking old school phones, and we're not even talking like push button phones, we're talking like you pick up the receiver and there's no dial or anything. Yeah, the old school ones, where you pick it up and the operator says, "Hey, what do you want? What do you want?" And you're just like, "I want Transylvania 65000, please." And you say those sorts of things. Now, the nice part about those systems is that they were incredibly modular. So if I'm in Seattle, Washington, and I pick up the little receiver and I tell my operator I want to call someone down the street, if the rest of the entire world had just been nuked, that call would still go through because it was someone literally taking a cable out, plugging it in, and creating a manual connection between 2 points. And then when you wanted to hit another substation, an operator got an operator on the line from that substation, and they routed the connection manually that way. It was a very modular system, so it was very difficult to take it all the way offline. In our current systems, you could take down individual components of it, but not all of it. In the current system, everything is much more centralized, just like what Stuart was saying earlier. Like with the example of GitHub, we in the open source world are putting 90% of all of our code on one server. If that server goes down, we are screwed. But if it's incredibly modular, then we're only a little bit screwed. So if we can come up with a way to more hyper-modularize these things and compartmentalize them better, and I'm not just talking little containers on the devices themselves for helping out with security. I'm talking about full modularization. It helps help a little bit.
This is why I said DDoSes are a problem. Because if you look, the internet is deliberately set up, it's a packet switch network, and right. But the point is that packets route their way there through various different approaches. There's not one single line. That's all great. So it's not vulnerable to large parts of the infrastructure being torn out as long as there is some route from A to B. But it is vulnerable to things like distributed denial of service. And there basically isn't a way of stopping that without exerting centralized control. You basically put a thing on every wire which says we'll only allow these packets through if we're allowed. And then you've got to work out who you give the list to, who's allowed to put things on the denied list.
You go the old school route of what the telephone companies used to do. The operators and the administrators in the telephone companies could literally say, okay,
but we're at a global scale that's just not a feasible, realistic.
I don't disagree with you. That's why I don't even know that this is the full solution. The fact is, I haven't heard any solution that's actually viable.
And I think we want internet providers to be dumb pipes. I think we've all decided that collectively. And part of what's worrying here is people, non-technical people, regulators saying we now want ISPs to fix this problem, which means deep packet inspection, traffic analysis of every user's traffic, and a whole bunch of things
which is already happening.
Don't want.
It's already happening, though.
I think
they're just not using it for us; they're using it against us right now.
I don't think they're doing.
The thing that's genuinely terrifying about this, in my mind, is there's a whole load of. There's like a whole load of chaos out there. To make a poor comparison to motoring, right? You've got roads out there, right? And it's filled with randomness, which is kind of like the internet. And then the thing that you use to get out there is a car. And safety ratings have played a huge role in the way in which people choose cars because you want to be you want to be in a safe car, obviously, when you're navigating that chaos. And I think that works there because there's a very clear physical impact on that, right? If you get into a car and you get into a car accident and you have a poor safety rated car, then you can get hurt, you can die, whatever. The challenge here in my mind is I just think for most consumers in the world, they just don't really understand how the internet works. It's just a thing that comes into their house. And the thing that they use to connect to the internet, the router or the modem or whatever else, I think is, again, a thing that they don't really get. And they don't really see digital things as necessarily all that harmful as it is today. Because what I was thinking earlier on was maybe we'll get to a point where the more this shit happens, there'll be kind of a similar kind of safety rating, like a volunteer thing that essentially manufacturers will use to provide assurances to consumers.
But
people don't understand how their cars work any better. If you ask people how a modern car works, they would have unequivocally no idea. They just know they get in and drive it.
Hang on. I agree with you, but what I'm saying is that when you go and buy a car, the safety rating is an active consideration when you purchase the car. And I'm wondering whether we'll get to a point where there'll be something similar for the devices that you buy that plug into the internet. So it's not certification, but the thing that terrifies me is I just think that people see digital stuff as not all that harmful, so they don't give as much of a shit about it because it's not physical impact to them.
They definitely don't.
So given the fact that we don't want people snooping into people's internet services and packets or whatever else, that's terrifying. We don't want to do that. But then the consumers aren't necessarily equipped to make those decisions.
So consumers don't care. Here's an actual
the issue.
Here's an actual stat for that. So the technology items will account for roughly 73% of spending this holiday season, right? So the CTA expects that roughly 170 million people are going to buy presents that contribute to IoT specifically, which means that if that continues, Gartner predicts that there will be 50 billion IoT devices worldwide by 2020. In a recent survey, half of consumers surveyed said that concerns about cybersecurity register as 0 on their buying scale.
Yeah. It's freaking zero.
And the big issue I have here personally is exactly what Jeremy brought up, because the way you solve something where individual people don't want to solve it and companies fighting it don't want to solve it, but there is a public good in doing something about it, is with regulation. That's what the government is for, but I don't trust them. Exactly the point is you should be able to say to them, regulate this to make it better, but what they'll do is regulate it to make it better for them and not us. Mm-hmm. Right? And
I wonder whether something similar might be like with the ESRB, the video game rating scale from years ago. Like it became a point of contention. There were Senate hearings about it, and then essentially the government said to the industry, "You have to regulate yourselves, or we'll regulate you." And they actually came up with something that ended up working. I don't know whether that's like just such a rarity in the world that could happen again.
The reason I think that worked for the ESRB and isn't going to work for this is that most of the devices you're buying are not made in America, and you do not have the power to enforce this kind of thing on stuff in another country. That's the problem. And the Chinese
what is imported into your country, though.
Yes.
As long as you're prepared to open up boxes on the docks and inspect them, which is a catastrophic impediment to free trade, which is not necessarily a bad thing in itself, but you've got to get it through the Senate.
I think what's dangerous about this problem is all the solutions that seem viable are very slippery slopes that almost invariably end up terribly.
Yes.
Horribly.
What was interesting, though, about the ESRB when I read about it was that it didn't really actually take hold as an effect until the like Walmart and the stores actually started mandating. Like they basically said, we will only stock these things, because the ESRB, of course, was like, you can put whatever label you want on it, but it doesn't stop anyone selling it. So to me, it's like maybe the international nature of IoT devices is the issue, but maybe it's got to be in the hands of of people who sell them. But then, of course, where that's different to the 80s is in the 80s and 90s, everyone went to stores to buy stuff.
That's interesting, though, because Amazon and Walmart and those big sites don't want to go down, so it behooves them to not sell products that then makes them go down. So they are actually an interested party in this. So that's an interesting
maybe
angle.
A way of solving it. You don't stop people importing non-regulated devices into the country. You just stop manufacturers in your country from selling them.
Or we could just stop putting internet connectivity into our toasters.
Right, I agree with you. This is stupid, but it's not me you've got to convince, right? It's the 170 million other people who are about to buy this Christmas an internet-connected toaster for reasons that escape me.
No. It's not those people, because most of those people don't give a shit. If literally the only reason some people get excited about IoT connected things is because a couple of companies really want to make money at building new things. Companies like Canonical, who want to be a big player in IoT. So we need to talk about it, talk about the dangers of it, and address the companies such as Canonical that are getting into this business to affect what route they're going down. That's how we dramatically impact change here. We don't have to
I think consumers don't want smart devices plugged into the internet is misguided. I think people do like the functionality. I think people do want that. The issue is that the implementation's shitty and it's causing these problems.
I think Brian's right here, right? What he's saying is, instead of these poor quality implementations at the moment we're seeing where people can just telnet in with password admin, we want to be seeing loads more stuff built by Canonical on devices. I agree with you entirely, Brian. Well played for saying, man.
Oh boy. No, wait a minute, Jono. So the point you made was that people really want their internet-connected toaster. So that means that if you're saying that...
No, hang on.
No, you just made that point just now.
Let me clarify the point that I'm making. I don't necessarily think people really want that today. What I'm saying is, I think the more people see smart connected devices in their homes, I think they like it. I think they like the choice. And that trend has already started. That trend started a long time ago.
No. You just now made my point. The more people see those devices being made, the more they'll want them. So go to the source, because people are not standing up and going, fuck it, I'm not buying another Black & Decker toaster until that sucker has its own IP address. Nobody's doing that. Not one person's doing that. Now, if we stop Black & Decker from making an IoT toaster, problem solved, and we don't have to create regulation to do it.
How do you do this?
It's a nice idea. About it.
How do you do it?
We talk about it. We talk about it on this show. We talk about it on stage. We talk about it. We send emails to the company. We start campaigns. We write articles. We make a big deal about how what they're doing is unsafe. Companies like Canonical are doing something that is going to dramatically impact society in an astoundingly negative way, even if they don't realize it yet. And we need to help them to understand the negative impact that they are having.
Really? The biggest sinner in this market is Canonical, or do you just not know anyone else's name to blame?
I'm bringing up Canonical because I'm talking to two people who used to work at Canonical, so we can have like an intelligent, informed conversation about it. There's a ton of companies involved here, and we should be addressing all of them, not going out into the public and saying, ooh, they're the most evil thing ever, because Canonical isn't, but they're doing something right now, pushing the IoT agenda that is going to cause problems. So we either need to find a way to fix it, and maybe someone can, to make it safe and secure so that Twitter and everything else don't go down again, or we need to help convince them that there's a better way to earn revenue. That's all it is. It's really simple.
Wouldn't it be a fair argument to say that Canonical are doing the right thing by building a stable and secure Ubuntu core
but
with
they haven't.
Snappy?
Yeah, they're trying to roll out infrastructure where devices are upgradable and are secure, certainly more than the current bar.
It certainly more than the current bar. If it's not approaching 100% or better, then it's simply pointless. If it's not secure, it's not secure. Security is a Boolean. If I have 8 doors in my house and 7 of them are locked like hell, if the 7 of them are locked and the 8th one is wide friggin' open, there's still a way to get in, and once people figure that out, they can get in all
there's always going to be a way to get in. No security is 100%. That's 100% is not a realistic bar.
But the current security, such as what Canonical has, and this really isn't to harp on them because they're not the worst offender in this regard, is simply already demonstrably not secure. There's posts upon posts upon posts where people have gone through and said, well, once they start releasing devices with this, here's how to get into them. Here's how they are insecure. So being as we already know that, it's insecure.
So your objection is any device running an operating system?
No. My objection is a toaster running an operating system.
If you said it's not just about canonical, your argument is software can be insecure if there is a device running an operating system. Therefore, it can be insecure. Therefore, we shouldn't have those devices.
Yes,
because
that is in fact
your objection is against computing.
There's a very key difference between, say, a computer that is under active use and active administration, and a device plugged in and sitting in your kitchen that may not get used every day, that you don't even notice, and you don't have a screen, and you're not logging into and checking on.
So why aren't you shouting at
Those
Linksys?
are very different things.
So far as I can tell, you've mentioned Black & Decker once in this segment and Canonical 59 times. Why aren't you shouting at Linksys, who are shipping devices like this?
We can absolutely shout at them too.
Netgear.
I talked about Canonical because I have two people here who worked there, so we can actually address it directly. If Jeremy used to work at Linksys, this would be about Linksys.
Right? Think about it this way.
Jeremy, did you work at Linksys?
Look at Linksys, Netgear, people like that. They have for years been shipping devices which are directly connected to the internet and in people's homes. This has not destroyed. They have demonstrably appalling security on every router out there.
Terrible.
This has, however, not destroyed the world.
No, but when you increase that number, when you get that number exponentially larger, when you're talking about instead of having 5 or 6 such devices in your home and you now have 20 or 30, not including your light switches and your thermostats, you've got a real problem. This starts to get way, way too large, way too quickly. And I think we all would agree with that.
Yeah,
I think that's the whole point of this segment.
But I don't understand why people buy these things. I understand why you buy an individual thing, no problem, right? Like internet-connected light bulbs. I could imagine that being cool. I'm not getting into it because there are too many incompatible standards and it's weird. But I quite like the idea of being able to go, Siri, turn my light bulbs off, and it happens. That would be quite nice.
I think the thing is, as is with everything, at the end of the day, there's going to be an appetite for certain devices, certain functionality, certain features. It's clear that there's an appetite in the in the world today for people to have an increasing number of smart devices in their homes. You know, the whole like technology adoption curve that we tend to see, to me, like the smart homes thing is definitely on the rise. It's not the mainstream yet, but we're going in that direction. All of these things are going to be running operating systems. And as Jeremy said, all of these things are going to have security issues from time to time. That's just human beings make software, human beings make mistakes, therefore software has mistakes. To me, the key thing is how do we fix those things and distribute them as quickly and as effectively as possible? Like it's this, the time bomb is already ticking, right? We're already heading in this direction. I don't think it's practical to either suggest that, you know, we can influence the industry so people don't want these things. I just don't think that's going to happen. And this is nothing. I think Canonical are one component in this.
You are the most fatalist person I know, and a bunch of other people. You literally, everything is give up. Don't give up. Fight for what's right. Fight for how things should be, not for how it's going to be because you've resigned yourself to defeat.
Look, I'm not giving up, but I'm practical, right? And realistic. And the realism is that let's have this conversation in a year or two, and let's see how many smart devices are out there, right? Like Brian, I would love to see you command an army of people who support your perspective on this, and to put together an initiative, something along the lines of an EFF or whatever it might be, to do this. And I would absolutely support you in that work. But I just, frankly, I think you should fight for things, but you've just got to be realistic about stuff. Like the world just isn't wired up that way right now. I just don't, I think we're heading down this path, and I don't think it's going to stop.
I think from my perspective, the first wave of IoT devices are already out, and I don't even think it's a ticking time bomb. I think it's already exploded. What I want to ensure, because I think the next wave of IoT devices are coming, whether I like it or not, is that the next wave are secure and upgradable in a sane, open, transparent fashion that protects everyone to the best of our ability. So and we've talked about this before on the show, and I don't know the answer to this, but we need to get people to care about their security, their privacy, and those things. And to me, that I think is the correct.
Here's the thing. We are public people working in the technology space. We lead by example at this point. And we have just literally finished a review where we purchased for $1,000 a device that's not even going to get security updates for that long, and it's more of a computer device that would get active updates than a friggin' toaster or an oven or a refrigerator. So we are, as a show, collectively saying we want things to be insecure, so much so that we're willing to spend $1,000. No. Yes, absolutely.
No one has said that.
Did you spend $1,000?
I don't think a company coming out and guaranteeing a specific amount of updates specifically is what you're saying.
No, what I'm saying is...
I mean, the battery in that thing probably won't last much longer anyway.
That's a fair point.
Right. Probably, yeah.
But there's the thing. No company. I can't think of a single company that could build an appliance and sell it that's going to get updates for any reasonable amount of time. And by reasonable amount of time, I mean more than a couple months. I mean, hell, look at a company right now, and I don't mean to harp on Canonical here. I'm just bringing it up because they're within our industry and we think about them a lot, right? So look at Canonical, right? If they release an IoT-based platform, and they're not alone in this regard, Canonical has shifted focus, I think, 5 times in the last 5 years. From an outsider looking in, they've shifted focus many times. So even the companies building the platforms aren't committed over the course of decades, which is what is required to keep them secure. Therefore, the companies utilizing those platforms, such as the Black & Deckers and whatnot of the world, are also not going to be committed. There is way too many points of failure here, and these devices are not going to get updated. End of story. They simply will not, because our desktop PCs don't, and our phones aren't. Nothing is updated for long enough to make an appliance type thing in our home updated for a long enough period of time.
Part of our conversation was,
secure.
what do we do to make that happen? That's what
exactly, and that's not going to happen.
I think we all agree with you. Like Brian, I think you raised a really good point.
But that's the thing.
A totally valid point.
Microsoft,
right?
Apple, they don't. Canonical, they don't support things for long enough on the desktops and servers. They don't, and that's on desktops and servers. Who the hell is going to make them do those things long enough? Let alone toasters. They're not going to do it. Why, so the solution becomes don't do it. Unless someone comes up with an actual solution.
Well, first of all, again, like, how many people were running Windows XP without, security updates?
And it was horrifying.
Right? Yeah. The solution being don't do it is just not a practical solution. It's just not going to happen. In my mind, much as we'd like that to happen, it's just not going to happen.
I think
it's just...
We've got to think about ways of mitigating the effect of it happening rather than preventing it happening in the first place. I agree completely. There is a qualitative step change between buying a phone which you expect to replace in 2 years anyway, buying a desktop PC which you expect to replace in 5 years anyway, at which point you'll still be in support, not a problem, and buying an oven which you'll probably still have 25 years from now.
Yes. Bingo.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Exactly.
And so the idea that someone's going to ship you updates to it for the next quarter of a century is completely unrealistic. So we've got
tech
to
company
assume,
probably won't even exist that long.
Right.
Yeah, but we're not going to stop people from selling these things because there is money to be made. So we've got to mitigate the effect of it. And I'd be interested in hearing suggestions for ways to do that. And to be honest with you, more social than technological, probably.
That was a long show, wasn't it? Jeez.
No, that was just the right kind of show. If you, my faithful listeners, my faithful listeners, if you feel that Jono was incorrect and that this was just the right amount of show, go to community.badvoltage.org and say, Jono, you're all bollocksy, or whatever random Englishy slang you want to put in there.
That's fair. That's fair.
That didn't sound very authentically English, I've got to tell you.
I need to work on it.
This is like when you go to the States or something and there's a thing which says British bar and you go in and there's a guy who goes, pip, pip, me old chap, and then tries to sell you marmalade on toast or something. Like, shut up, man.
I tell you what, Stu, you are really making me chuffed off here, governor.
You've got no idea, right?
None. I have no idea.
Well, actually... When I went for my citizenship, actually, they said, here's going to be a cultural awareness for English people, and it was just basically chitty, chitty, bang, bang. That's where Americans source their, cultural relevancy of English. So,
I love that movie.
Great movie, by the way. That needs a reboot right there, like a Michael Bay reboot.
It absolutely does not. Do not
Chitty,
fuck
chitty,
about with
bang,
Chitty Chitty
bang.
Bang Bang. It's a brilliant film, and you're not to fiddle with it
it's
at all.
perfect, just the way
Chitty,
it is.
It is.
Chitty, chitty explosion.
That's the Michael Bay version. Yeah, chitty chitty bang 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 bang.
Even the marmalade on toast blows up in the Bay version, I assume.
Even the marmalade on toast blows up in the Bay version. It's going to be interesting, actually, to see how Jono gets on with his Pixel XL, because I've just switched from an Android phone to an iPhone. So,
Did you really?
Well,
Really?
Did you really do that?
It wasn't actually.
You went back?
It wasn't a deliberate policy decision. My OnePlus X has stopped charging, so I have sent it back to OnePlus. I got a bunch of people when I bought the OnePlus said, "No, man, it's rubbish," because their customer service is terrible. So far, it stopped charging. I contacted them. They said, "Oh, we're terribly sorry about that. Send it back to us. We'll email you a label." They emailed me a label. DHL came round and picked it up and have now taken it away. It remains to be seen whether they come back and go, "We're terribly sorry, here it is fixed," or whether they say, "Yeah, that's your fault," and try and charge me 300 quid for it or whatever. But so far, their customer service has been impeccable, given the fact that it broke.
Hang on.
And because of this, I no longer have a OnePlus X, and therefore I need another phone, and I've got my 5C still, so I've switched back to that.
Are you telling me that people can change? Is that what you're telling me with the with the customer service thing? People can change.
Apparently,
right?
Would you believe it?
Didn't believe it. No, didn't believe it.
I'm
this
still,
election season has taught us that no one can change.
After having seen the epic saga that Jeremy went through with the watch, right? I'm not calling this one done until I've got a working phone.
I was going to say, until you open that return DHL package and it has what you actually want in it, I would. Hold off there.
Talk about something that needs a Michael Bay reboot. Okay, Jeremy's.
I tell you what,
Jeremy's
right?
saga.
I am looking forward to the day when 3 days from now they say, "We're terribly sorry, and we'll send it back to you at our expense." They send it back and open it up, and inside is a Moto 360 watch in perfect working order. But we shall see how it goes. But it's interesting, switching back from Android to iPhone, right? I remember a bunch of the things which annoyed me about Android have just gone away, which is convenient. But equally, I have discovered this is 2016 and you still have to have iTunes to make a custom ringtone. What's wrong with the world? For God's sake, there's no way of doing it without iTunes.
I would like to modify that slightly to be, it's 2016. Why are you making a custom ringtone?
Because my ringtone is the theme music from the League of Gentlemen, right? If I don't have that as my ringtone, I've been using this for 3-4 days now. Every single time the phone has rung, I have ignored it because it doesn't sound like my phone.
Nah, I get that, man. I totally get that. I used to have the A-Team theme song as my ringtone, and every time I switched a phone, if I didn't put that back on there, it just didn't register.
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't matter what sort of noise it was making. If it wasn't the friggin' A-Team theme song with the I didn't answer it.
Exactly, right?
Yep.
There you go. That's the point. So, and I thought to myself, well, there's got to be a way of doing this. And there's a bunch of stuff which says things like libimobile device works fine with iOS 10. You're like, yeah, okay, it works fine with iOS 10 to do the stuff that they now claim they can do, but Music Sync no longer works for anything. Remember how you used to be able to do it in Rhythmbox or Banshee or whatever?
Yeah.
It was all libgpod under the covers, and in iOS 6 or something like that, Apple changed it so all music is now fair play encrypted or whatever, so you just can't sync iPhones anymore at all, and you haven't been able to for years. I had no idea this was the case. And it's really annoying because in order to be a ringtone, you have to be in the iPhone music library, and we can't put things in the iPhone music library anymore. Frustrated. Wow. So that's very annoying. On the other hand, there's a whole bunch of nice things about the phone as well. So it's going to be interesting to see whether I stick with this, how Jono gets on with his...
Please, let's not review the iPhone 5C.
1970s two-tone thing.
Yeah, that's way too modern for a bad voltage review.
Let's not do that.
Well, I do have to say, I like the fact that we are constantly pilloried for spending time going, okay, new technology now for review on bad voltage, the Kindle One or whatever. And the first time we come up with a thing which is only only been out for 5 minutes. What did we say? Let's wait a year and review it again.
Yeah, you gotta do it.
Just can't help ourselves.
It's funny because it's true.
So, yes.
So,
we'll see how you get on with it.
Yeah.
So Jeremy and I went off to a conference in the last week, which All Things Open.
Yep.
Jeremy, your first time, what did you think of it?
That was a great show. Very good.
Yeah. Little different. Brian, have you been to All Things Open?
No, I've never been to All Things Open because they never... I've been invited, but
you?
No, they've invited me along, and I've thought about going for other reasons as well, but there's just never anything, and I like a lot of the people involved with this show, so I don't want to poo-poo it, but there's just never anything happening there that is interesting. Like, there's never a speaker where I'm like, I've got to see that person. There's never a track where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just information I need to have. Like, I just have never found a reason to go.
What's the point of it? It feels to me like that sounds way more pejorative than I'm thinking. It feels to me kind of like OSCON in that it's just about open source things. Generally.
Yeah, but not all open source things, as the name would apply. It would just be a couple of things open. Is really the name of the conference.
That's really
that it should be.
mean.
Well, there's like 17 tracks. I'm not sure there's anything they didn't cover.
I mean, did they cover absolutely everything open?
Well, bear with me. What's the purpose of the show? I don't know much about it.
So if you imagine Scale or Community on one side and OSCON on the other, it's probably one of the only shows that's more towards the center of those two styles.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. It's a good way of describing it.
Was it good?
I would go back, yes.
I liked it. Yep.
Yeah. What's
interesting about it
what was the best part?
You should go first, Jeremy, because I went last year. What did you think?
There's just a lot of energy. If you remember back way to OSCONs where there was just a ton of energy. And I think that one thing for me being my first time there is I see a lot of the same people at conferences and a lot of the same stuff at conferences. And this one definitely has a little bit of a different vibe to it in a good way.
Oh, that's good. That is, yeah, because OSCON has gotten kind of, I don't know, lethargic and dull. Like, I don't... I feel like I'm just ranting about conferences now, but I like
OSCON, but it's definitely turned into a specific thing where this is.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, the one of the things that was nice about OSCON this year was more of a different crowd because they moved the location and they deliberately had like speakers who were not the usual crowd. But I think for the 10 years preceding that OSCON, it's been many of the same people.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the LinuxCon events as well. A lot of the same kind of people go there. And it is a different crowd at All Things Open, admittedly, because it's a lot of the local crowd, a lot of Raleigh people.
Right.
It's very Red Hatty.
It's in Raleigh-Durham, right? Okay.
And they have like, they cover open source, but they do cover like open hardware, security, like a bunch of different areas. Part of the reason why I like it is like it's a conference that's getting going, right? Yeah. So it's there's like Jeremy says, there's a ton of energy, but also like the guy who runs it is, Todd Lewis and his team. They're really eager to just be the best that they can be. There's an energy to be the best that they can be in the same way that I don't feel like Scale has ever lost that. Like Scale always wants to improve and grow and refine. And I really admire that in a conference.
Is it about the same sort of size as Scale?
I think they said
they had 2,400 people
2,600 people, yeah.
Wow, that's pretty big.
Okay, so it's about the size of Linux Fest Northwest then. Similar.
Right. And they have like, last year I think they had like 1,500 people. So they're growing. Yeah. And it's neat because like there's a big expo area there, so they definitely have like the business end of things, but the business side of things doesn't feel overpowering. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of like pay to play, paid spots there, things like that.
Right.
No.
You get the sense that people are on the stage because they've earned to be on the stage, which I dig as well. So
that is cool. I like that. Maybe I'll have to give it a shot next year. I keep looking at the schedule.
I think you'd like it, Brian.
I keep going. Why would I go to this? But I don't know. Maybe I'll go next year and just give it a whirl.
Yeah, I think you'd feel it was worth a trip.
This is once a year in November sort of time. That's when it happens.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
Nice.
So but good times. So another good event to go out to.
Bad Voltage represent another conference. Nice. That's what we like to see.
Also, we'd like to see.
Speaking of events as well, the call for papers for Scale is going to be closing. So if you're going to go to the the Southern California Linux Expo listeners and you want to go and do a talk, get your papers in, okay? So it's going to be closing in the next couple of weeks. So I think it'll be about a week after you've heard this. It'll be closing. So,
Something like that.
Do it. It's a great conference.
We
love it. We'll all be
show.
there.
Yeah, we'll be there.
All right. Should we wrap it up?
Yep.
No,
should.
I want to keep talking for a while. I feel like what if we just set a goal for ourselves? Let's talk for 10 more minutes about nothing. Like just Seinfeld it up and just see how far we can go.
I don't think
I feel
so.
like people are frightened. Yeah.
I feel like I just kind of hurt Jono's soul a little bit.
I think I don't care about Jono's soul. I'm starving. It's 20 to 8.
Actually, I am a little bit hungry. Wait a minute. As we send everyone off into the world, Stuart, what are you going to go eat right now?
Whatever I can find in the freezer. Today's not going to be a very inventive day for culinary excellence, I'm
So it's
afraid.
going to be Jägermeister then.
Not Jägermeister.
Jaeger and some crisps.
Breakfast of champions.
It is the breakfast of champions. That's what it is.
Jono, it's about lunchtime there. What are you going to go eat?
I think we're going to go to Subway. Fancy sandwich.
Subway?
Yeah.
Go to that Ike's place.
I have to get in a car to go there, and I've got stuff I need to do, so I can walk to Subway from where I am.
You know what? I've got that same thing going on here. I'm kind of hungry, but I don't want to drive anywhere. There's a Subway just around the corner I could just walk to, get myself one of those big toasty meatball subs covered in pepper jack cheese.
Yep.
I know it's made from weird stuff, but I still kind of want to eat it.
On an unrelated
ask
note,
them to not
this
put
episode
olives.
of Bad Voltage brought to you by Subway.
Just make sure you tell people, when you ask them to not put olives in your Subway, just keep an eagle eye on those fuckers, okay? Because those people explicitly ignore your instructions, okay? We independently verify this at scale in the line at Subway.
Yeah, no, this is true. They do get a little bit crazy with the olives. That is an undeniable fact.
Yeah.
Another key
Olive
point,
fingers.
and I'll leave the show on this. If you're ordering a meatball sandwich from Subway, before you order it, ask them how the meatballs are right now. Because sometimes they put these meatballs in a vat and they just sit there and cook for like half the day, and those fuckers get dry and hard. So you got to ask them. You need to know how fresh they are. And if they've been in there for less than an hour, you're good to go. If not, you move right along and you get yourself like a turkey sandwich or something and just bypass those meatballs.
Right,
If
so
you
we've
have to
already
ask,
established that
you don't want to know.
You don't want to know, exactly right. First of all, it wouldn't surprise me if a couple of the meatballs at the bottom of that vat have been in there like a week, maybe more.
No, they change it out. I've asked them about this. They have a schedule where they change out those vats every so many hours. But near the end of that time, it's no good, man. They're just no good. That window is too friggin' large, and those turkey meatballs get dry as hell.
So all we've
Well,
got
the
to
good
worry
news
about
is that-
now, all we've got to worry about now then is the pressure that they're under from the big olive lobby, in order to make sure there's olive in all of your sandwiches.
Well, I'm sure there's going to be I'm sure there's going to be a probe stuck into the meatballs that has a device connected to it that at some point is going to take down my access to CandyCrush.com or something like that. This is the way. This is
That
the
does
way
seem
we're going.
likely. Yeah, that's going to happen.
Damn you, Subway!
Friggin' Jared.
Right.
Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.